Welcome to the Miniatures Paintbrush. Today we're going to paint up some blood claws from my Space Wolves collection. Howl! Alrighty, so welcome back, guys. Here I'm starting with a Citadel base coat brush. These brushes I bought in the early 2000s when I started hobbying. I don't believe they make them anymore. They changed the design of them, so it's a bit different. And here is my Space Wolf build and chat. It took me about 4 months to get the 15 Space Wolves complete. And the reason why I embarked on this was because I kind of wanted to challenge myself to be able to build many different miniatures, and instead of just building one at a time. The last miniatures that I've done as some kind of small warband was my Trollkin, and that is for privateer presses, war machine hordes, warma hordes. So those took me about 2 years to do because I was learning techniques and slowly building up techniques to get faster. So from building, I would say for 9 miniatures in 2 years, I went to building 15 miniatures in 4 months. So the time it takes me to paint to a quality in which I'm happy with is shortened considerably. So I guess this is my version of a speed paint for now, which is, well, I mean, it's interesting to say the least because I never thought I'd be able to accomplish this, to actually paint all these miniatures in the small amount of time, relatively small amount of time that that I had, and it motivated me. See, the channel actually motivated me to continue painting and to produce content for you guys. Plus, there are a lot of different smaller videos that I produced just to get content. I mean, it was pretty good content. When it comes stage building this in stages, I have base coating it and what I use to base coat and highlight these. And then I did a fur tutorial, which inspired me to do also a basing tutorial, which is actually going to come up next week. I did in techniques and learned how to pre-drill gun barrel holes. I actually used a Dremel tool to do that. I was practicing my my control, my hand control, and that definitely presented itself as something that, you know, would be very challenging, but very, very rewarding. So okay, so this first thing that I did after the miniatures base coated and pre-shaded, like in that previous video that I've done, is just take a white, I believe this foundation white from Vallejo Game Color, and all I'm doing is base coating this, I guess, parchment-like crest on his chest. And why I do this is because whenever I'm painting over anything, especially when I'm painting white or cream, I kind of base it in white first. You know, I do the same with yellows and mainly reds and any kind of color that's kind of hard to paint for me. I base coat it in white before I move forward. And, you know, these acrylic paints are pretty translucent. So it'll, that lower color, or the color underneath, is going to shine through. Especially because, you know, we thin down our paints in this hobby to create that translucent effect. It gives it more depth to the paint. So it's just not just slapped on. It's definitely not chunky when you do it. So if you're going to do a brighter color or one of those colors you may have trouble with, I do recommend base coating the actual area in which you're going to tackle with this in a white. Now next, after I did the crest, I did the fur bits and the bone bits as well. Now all of these are going to be painted different colors, but on the same spectrum of that white to cream to brown. You know, you're going to have that consistency, some a little more warm than the other. And I do like to put some warm touches into a cold miniature. What I mean by that is the colors itself, blue is a colder color, while reds are tending to be like a summery or a warmer color. And, you know, they contrast really well. I like the way it makes it very visually interesting. So kind of like to have both of those on the spectrum. I do look at a color wheel. I have a pocket color wheel, which I kind of stuck onto my airbrushing chamber booth, paint station, and I use it as reference. I usually, to make miniature interesting, the hardest part for me is to choose which colors to kind of paint things. And once I'm in a direction where I'm happy with, I kind of just go that direction. And when it comes to like painting an army, this is really important decision that you need to make from the beginning, especially because, you know, armies are uniform. All right, time for some black. I am going to reinforce some shadows here and paint areas black, as well as the, I guess the Kevlar rubber tubings. It reminds me of like air vent tubing. And it's in the creases of the back of the legs and the creases of the arm. This way it makes it, I don't know, flexible for this little dude to move around in. I kind of wanted to go black with this one here. There have been others where all I did was like threw a wash in there and just, you know, let the recesses look like it's worn a little bit, so this way the color underneath it started coming up. And it looks like it's been like rubbed on a little bit too much and leave it a worn look. But this one, I guess kind of wanted to make it like fresh, like he's a new dude, and he just got this armor, and for some reason the Kevlar, I guess, or whatever that is, between the recesses of the legs and arms were new. So I painted that black, and then later on I put a wash into it as well. Now look at the way I'm holding on to the pill bottle with one hand, and then with the other hand I'm kind of leaning it onto the pill bottle. And what this does is give me more brush control. This is one thing I did learn while painting these guys up, was a lot of brush control. You see how I lean my pinky onto the actual pill bottle? I usually do that, and it just helps support it. It really does. I like that. And if you ever wanted to know how, I try to draw some straight lines or really get into small crevices or paint eyes or paint the glimmer on an eye or something like that, I usually stabilize my hand. Sometimes I lock my hands in and then put them on the edge of a table, and then I lock my shoulders in to the body, and it's just one solid, and I get into one solid stance in a fashion where I'm not, moving around, because honestly, your body kind of wants to move around because the blood is flowing through your body, and there's constant movement there. And, even your heartbeat will make your hands shake just a little bit. A lack of blood flow through your hands will also make it shake. There's a lot of things, it depends. There's some times where I'm painting for hours and my hands just, they start shaking. At this point, I'm like, okay, so let me work on a terrain piece or something like that, because, I am not going to be happy with the results if I continue painting and pushing through. So, you got to know when to hold them and know when to fold them, and know when to walk away and know when to jettison out of there. So I'm just reinforcing the black here. There it is, that it's done. And I did my best to focus in the camera as closely as possible. And so I hope the video quality came out well. I mean, I checked it out a little bit, but we'll see. I trimmed it down from a 3-hour video to about an hour and 26 or 30 minutes or so. All right, now I'm going to use fantasy in games. We have Arbuckles Brown, and we had good golly. I like the fantasy in games line, and I had Arbuckles Brown, and that's really like purplish color, and I like using that in conjunction with a chestnut in order to bring like that brown texture, that purple texture to get the shadows. And you know, I literally took this from Vince Venturella, his non-metallic metal gold, but you know, I changed it up just a little bit. I added more inks to it, and you know, I try to make it my own, but I build upon, you know, I stand on the shoulders of giants to create my own thing. And I'll show you the process of my non-metallic metal gold later. All right, now what I'm going to do is I am painting the bone white from Vallejo Game Color. I really like it. It's a yellowish kind of white. Again, warm. And that's going to be a nice base coat. And then time for some ivory. I wanted the chest piece to be a different color from the bone. You don't want to, you know, you want to create the illusion that they are different materials, and they can't be exactly the same color, because then it looks like, hey, you have a bone on chest plate and some bones on the gun as well, and on the backpack. And that's really not, I mean, I guess it would work fine for some, but you kind of want to create textures and different textures. You don't want to really have everything that unified, because then it just ruins the illusion that this is a real miniature person that is in there. And you know, it's so much more realistic when you have the depth of different materials and you show that through. Okay, so this is very thin down ivory. This is Vallejo model color. And again, doing just the chest piece in that ivory to make that differentiated texture. This model is unique because it has that, I guess, scroll work on the chest, which I write on using micron pens. As well, you can use a fine tipped brush as well to use writing, and I've done both. I like the micron pens only because I don't have to redip my brush. What usually happens is either I gather too much paint when I'm doing writing letter characters on something, and you know, it just makes it a big huge mess, or it's too little. I mean, it's great to write maybe half a letter and then it just dries out in the brush. And I do try to get some paint in the belly of the brush. It's just the way I dub flowate and everything else. It's a little tough for me. I mean, I still need to get used to it, you know. So for now, I'm taking the ivory and again another base coat for oh goodness, that's not ivory. That's the sorry, bone white. And I'm painting it as a base coat. I'm going to be doing a lot of layers onto the fur to try to give it that gradient. I like a brown gradient that I did with this miniature. Now, there are some in the line where I left white streaks on the fur. That's something also I was learning when it came to building this miniature, is how to paint fur. Because a lot of the time, when you're painting miniature, you're just constantly learning new things and reinforcing things you already know so you can get faster at it. Uncle Adam from Tabletop Miniatures said that in a recent video that, you know, there's improvement and then there's a plateau, and when you're plateauing, you do get faster the more you paint. Okay, time for some yellow here. Now, I like to use inks, and I've learned how to use inks building these models too. Again, pushing myself in a lot of different directions when it came to these 15 blood claws. So, just learning. Now, the problem with the flat yellow, unfortunately, it is chunky as all get out. So you really have to thin it down and do it in a lot of layers. But the good thing about using the inks is that it's so highly densely pigmented that it turns that flat yellow that's really thin, and I mean it highly colorizes it. So this way you don't really have to do that many coats, and they're still thin. So that definitely works. And well, yellow has always been a problem color for me, and so has red. But again, using those inks, oh my goodness, so much better. Alrighty, so we have here, this is the progression of the miniature so far. A lot of base coating going on. And now for some base coating for the non-metallic metal gold. Now, this is a great color. This is opaque. This is extra heavy opaque. And it's a gold brown, heavy gold brown. And it's a great base for gold. I really like that because then it just gives that the depth. Again, you have the Arbuckles brown from Fantasy and Games, and then you have mixed in a little bit of brown, chestnut brown, and then having the heavy gold brown on top of that, giving more layers, giving more depth. Two things about non-metallic metal gold that, and I'm still working on that. I have not perfected it. I mean, at all. I don't think so. It's going to take many years to be able to consider it done to the point where it's routine and it's quickly done. I have improved with time with that. But the thing about non-metallic metal gold, two things actually, are you have depth within the gold, and then you have blends within the gold that are seamless. And if you do those two, then there you go. All right, leather brown and black, model game color. Now these here I mixed in 1-to-1 ratio, and I'm starting with the very recesses of the fur, and I wanted it to be dark at this end. Again, it's going to get lighter as it goes onto the tip. That's the kind of gradient I wanted for this guy. I didn't leave any white streaks in the middle like I've done with other guys in the faction, because I just wanted to do him a little bit different. Again, adding variation to the force. And one thing I do not like to do is paint the same dude over and over again. And that's why, when it comes to like board games like Zombicide or something like that, they're the same miniature in the same position, and it's over and over again, and it lends itself to batch painting. And I don't like batch painting. I don't. And the reason why I don't like batch painting, and it's perfectly fine. Some people love it, but I don't, because I want to make each one individual, and I like painting differences within each, and making each member of the force unique in itself. And that's tough. I mean, if you go to paint an army that has 100, 200 people, it's going to take a long time, and that's fine with me. Actually, I posted on Facebook that it took me 4 months to paint these, and to me that's speed paint. And some people are like, oh, it's a burden to be able to paint all these. That's because they play the game in conventions and stuff like that, and they have a time limit in which they need to get these things done. And I think that restricts me as a painter. Like, I'm not going to really improve as a painter. Maybe improve as a speed painter, maybe if I rush things and cut corners. But the way I see it, with as much as these miniatures do cost, I get my money's worth, because if it takes me months to do, I got months worth of value and out of the miniature, because I keep learning new things and I keep improving. And for me, this part here is the main part of the hobby, is creating color, interest, and depth, and creating, essentially making something come to life when there was just plastic, and then selling the idea that this is not just a plastic piece or a toy. It is a it's a small version of a person, and it's very realistic. And it's hard to say the word realistic when it comes to a fantasy miniature, but I want it to jump out at you at some point, and I want you to look at it, and I want you to look at each individual piece of this army that I'm creating, and I want you to take like one miniature up, lift it up, take a look at it, and find something new every time you look at it. Time for some Agrax Earthshade for that fur. Adding another layer to it, and when you're doing this method, I actually didn't dry brush. What I did was I picked out little pieces of fur later on. I think I did that off camera, unfortunately. But I'm layering this one with Agrax Earthshade right now, and you kind of want to just like paint over where you painted, like create a line with a new color, and then slowly take your paint and blend it. So this way you have a lighter transition going down and a darker transition going up, but still it unifies the fur, making saying this is one piece of fur. You don't want to have just a line going straight across. And I'm going to do this with all the fur pieces. Here's the top knot as well. Again, blending that Agrax Earthshade into the original leather brown and black combination color, creating that gradient. That was a lot of fun. So, yeah, so when I'm painting these things, I don't find that as a burden. If it takes a long time, that means, you know, whatever I paid for it, I'm getting my money's worth, because it's just more time I get to sit down, enjoy, the more time I get to learn new stuff, the more time that I get to improve what I do here, and I honestly to make more content for you guys, because another part of my hobby is actually creating videos and showing other people that it's okay to be a slow painter. And it's okay to want to paint things to a certain quality. And it's not stressful for me if you have the right attitude when it comes into this. So everybody, you know, the thing is with a lot of people just want to, you know, pick up and consume and play and have fun and just go straight from, you know, from zero to hero with like little to no effort, and that's not what it takes in this hobby, and it is not what it takes in I like to refer to sports, because you know, if you want to improve, you got to practice, and that takes time. You're not an overnight sensation. Some people are naturally talented, and that, you know, there's a variance. I'm not one of those people. I don't tote myself as being a talented miniature painter. I don't think I ever will, but that only means that I'm willing to learn, you know? Because if you are like, I know that I'm talented or whatever, then you'll never grow as an individual. So you really want to watch that attitude when it comes to improving. And you can't really have an attitude in sports if you're a player, because, you know, you can have the attitude, and there are people, but it really destroys the team. It really does. And it hinders your progress. And that too. Because if you know everything, then what's there to learn? How are you going to improve, really? So I'm in this for improving and getting better, and I'm in this because I'm fighting the gray miniatures, and I want to bring things to life. And I'm really, right now, while I'm painting this, I'm really having a lot of fun. This is amazing, because I keep on looking at the fur, and you know, it's a little nerve-wracking. It's like, is this going to come out all right? There are some techniques that I don't practice before I put it to camera, and I say, you know what, I'm just going to go for it and see what happens. So, you know, sometimes you see, I guess, the worst example of a technique, because it's my first example of that technique. But you know what, life's too short, so I go for it, you know. And there are other techniques like this one right here. I believe this was miniature number 14. Yeah, miniature number 14 out of the 15, because I had like one more I had to do, and I did that one off camera. I just decided to do this one. And yeah, each one of these miniatures that I did, I sort of batch painted the base coating and the pre-shading. I did that, and then after that was done, I put each one of these on a separate pill bottle, and I painted each one to completion before I moved on to the next one. And I really enjoyed that process. Um, so yeah, I put that out on Facebook just to let them know, that I'm okay with that. And this is my theory on painting miniatures. And for me, it has totally worked. I don't necessarily burn out. There are people that do. I'm excited. I'm excited. Yeah, and also another thing is, talk about hobby burnout. You know, if you're painting these space wolves or anything else in your force, and I'm painting my Death Army as well, and I haven't painted that in a very long time because I took a hiatus to paint these guys, and I built a model car in between that, and I started painting up terrain in between that. I take a break. I go from one thing to another. Next, I do want to paint up Engineer Jeff's Scorn starter box. That might be the next one I do. Because I mean, if you haven't checked out his channel, Engineer Jeff is amazing. I mean, he is a totally cool dude from what I know, and I do wish to hang with him one of these days, and be like, he seems like a really cool dude to hang out with, and he's just this chill dude that hangs out in his basement and likes to paint miniatures and talk about things, and that's pretty much what I do. So. That's really, really cool. He's live streaming now. Again, his channel's Engineer Jeff. I really like him. He seems like a really cool dude. Okay, this is a technique that I use when it comes to shading Parchment. I put on the shade. I have sepia, Seraphim sepia, and I put it on rather thick on the ends, and then I took some water and I wiped away some excess or diluted the excess towards the middle. And what it does is it creates a lighter point on the actual area that's closest to you, creating a highlight automatically, and then in the recess is darker. And I love using that technique. Real simple. You've seen how quickly I did it right there. And there you go, it's done, and it has a character to it. I do like that, and I do that for a lot of my parchments as well. And sometimes I add more lines like edge highlighting and stuff like that. But for once and done, that's not bad. I like it. Okay, time for a cheap brush. This is Simply Simon's. It's a soft brush, and I use it for this is washing. And what I'm doing is just poking brown wash. I think it's Van Dyke Brown from Winsor & Newton's oil wash. I do like oil washes, and I mix oil paint with mineral spirits to create this wash. And I don't have a precise measurement for it, because when you take it out of the tube, and it just take a very little amount out, and then put it into a container, and then put like a couple of drops and dilute that oil paint to the point where when you touch it against something, it doesn't pool as much as you touch it, and it pulls where you want to, and it comes over the top. And the good thing about oil washes is that if you do get too much onto it, all you have to do is take some mineral spirits and go with very gently with a toothbrush or something like that. Now with this one, I was pretty bold. Usually I put a coat of gloss coat on top of the miniature before I put the mineral spirits onto it, only because if you don't, you can rub the paint right off. Yeah, very easily. But as long as I just tap it, it's not a big deal. I go very gently with it. Pow pow. Okay. I had to clean my lens there. It was like a little dirty there. I don't know what was up with that. I think some mineral spirits got onto it. Terrible. It was too close. There's some Bootstrap leather from P3. I have other browns there as well. I like leather brown. I like heavy gold brown. And, I mix them together, usually creating a gradient on my wet palette over there. And if you don't have a wet palette, I recommend you getting one. It helps your paint stay longer. And if you create like a nice color by mixing two paints together, and it's really hard to get that same consistency back, well, you can always get that color right back because it's still on your palette. You'll have more reserves. So what I'm doing is I'm taking Bootstrap Leather from P3. I do like Bootstrap Leather. It has that rich brown to it for when it comes to some of the leather effects. So I'm going for like a leather rope somehow, or brown rope. And I do highlights, and you see that I'm using the edge of the brush, not the tip of the brush. And it is super light. That's the way I work when it comes to those things. And I do like GW models because I think that the highlights are, and the recesses are a little deeper, and the highlights seem to pop up more. But that just could be me. But, it's a painter's miniature. I hate when I use expressions like that because they seem a little vague. But what I mean by that is that, it's a little easier to paint because they take in consideration that you will be edge highlighting and with the side of the brush, and they take in consideration that you will be painting in thin coats and building it up, and they take into consideration the how much flashing each piece has and how it goes together and how it's repositioned, and it just makes it that you can, not have the same miniature over and over again and get tired of it. But you can position these guns and stuff in various ways and not get bored with it. So even if you bought 2 or 3 kits of the same miniatures, you can have them in different poses, and you can change up different guns, and you can change up different weapons and make it look different, make it look your own, so you won't get bored with it. So I really do like that about GW miniatures. They really take a lot of that into consideration when they put together a model. Now, before putting any kind of paint onto a miniature after you're doing an oil wash, make sure it's completely dry. And what I mean by completely dry is 24 to 48 hours dry. Yeah. So I did wait 48 hours before I even touched it. And, sometimes I waited 72 hours with some miniatures. And the reason why is you don't want to mix mineral spirits, which is oil-based, and oil paint, which is oil-based, with acrylic, which is more water-based. And because when you do that, oil and water do not mix, and the reaction could be not desirable when it comes to this hobby. So I highly do not recommend that you mix those two mediums together and make sure that your miniature is completely dry. Now, after which, there have been times where I put the gloss coat on before I put the shading in, and then I would put a dull coat on in order to continue painting. But I didn't do that this time. I just went straight for going for it, and just put some oil washes where I needed it. I mean, I didn't I haven't put too much on there, in the fact that I didn't wash the entire miniature or anything like that. I just did the bones. So to me, I was just like, whatevs. I'm just, well, I mean, if I'm doing the holes and drilling out the gun barrels with a Dremel tool instead of a pin vise, then I kind of do things a little bit different than other people, and I'm fine with it. It makes me me, So now, if you want more control and use a pin vise, I just don't like the way it feels in my hand sometimes, and sometimes I just go for the Dremel, which, while I was building my Trollkin army, was a heaven sent, really, because it saved so much time, and it's great. And there's tricks using a Dremel tool to be able to drill things out, especially with these plastics, because it's moving so fast it actually starts melting the plastic. And when you drill into the actual drill bit, And what you have to do is, well, what I do is I take a razor blade or box cutting knife, and I slowly go alongside of the drill bit, and I'll just keep pushing up. And I use a special drill bit for that. It's more of an engraving type tool that I bought from the Dremel tool, and I think it was a carving or something. Yeah, engraving or carving set. I think it was carving. I think it was a carving drill bit, and it's just like a big ball in the tip, or maybe a smaller ball in the tip, and it's the shaft itself is completely smooth. So the only thing that's cutting is the ball tip, which has recesses in it, or I guess engravements in it, slots in it that actually cut. And to me, it works perfectly for this application. It hot knife through butter. That's what it cuts. It cuts right through. And you also have to be very careful, because you will cut right through and keep going, and like ruin if you ruin the miniature if you're not careful. But knowing when to back off is an important thing. And nothing does that more than drilling out the gun barrel. But the question is, what if you overdo it, right, on a gun barrel? Because that's pretty tough, right? I've overdone it, actually. It started melting the gun barrel a little bit because I stayed in one area for too long. Don't. Confidently go straight through and come back out, and go straight through and come back out. And that's the only way. Do it from one end, do it from the other end, and then do it in the middle. And there's a gun barrel drilled out right there. If you stay too long in one area, it starts to melt the plastic, and it's not disastrous. All I did was take a little bit of green stuff, which is Neatite, and I rolled it up into a little snake, heavy brown. I rolled it up into a little snake, and then I just put it over the gun barrel, and I formed it and I sculpted it, and there you go. When you're working with green stuff, I use some Vaseline, but they do have sculptor Vaseline from Green Stuff World that I use also. It prevents it from being ultra sticky when you're manipulating it, and it's easier to work in there. Alright, so what I'm doing here is going with the darker brown and trying to create shadows in the rope that's holding these skulls, these wolf skulls, onto both the gun and the backpack. So it's heavily diluted. I'm getting into the recesses, almost a wash consistency when it comes to that, really giving a depth to these ropes and in between the ropes. So lighter brown, and then that heavy brown. And then I go up to the highlight as well. So I do a fair bit of detailing when it comes to just a rope, but these are the details that they seem to stand out. And you can, as a painter, if you're looking at miniatures, you're looking at things with an eye where, okay, how did they create this, and how do they make this, and what steps do they take? And then you say, wow, they really put depth in that little rope. Who does that, right? So yeah, and that's why, I also look at eyes, and how they frame the miniature, and starting from the face, because that's the focal point. And I take these things in consideration, and I try to add detail. I like it again. I like to paint to that standard. Okay, some leather brown. This time is from Vallejo model color. Game color. Sorry, and some bone white. Blanco de hueso, and I do like adding colors, and I'm mixing it on my palette, creating new colors, and just having a unique highlight. Something different. Again, changing it up, adding more to it. I want somebody who paints miniatures to look at my miniatures and say, whoa, check that out. Well, how'd you do that? Or how'd you make this happen? Or, it's intriguing now. And now it's a conversation piece. And that is truly an honor when I have another miniature painter look at my miniatures and start a conversation based on what I did when it came to making the miniature. And, I guess if they watch the videos, they can see it, but... and they can hear me ramble on, because this is me chatting to you guys and painting a miniature from zero to hero. This video is about at least 3 hours long, and of course it doesn't include dry times and stuff like that, so kind of chopped it down to 1.5 hours. But in that 1.5 hours, I try to pack in as much as I possibly can, so this way you can recreate this. Or you can just put this in the background and start painting yourself when we're painting together. There you go. I'm really thinking about having a painting uh, group in my local painting stores. I have two. It's just finding the time is pretty tough, and you know, this doing this hobby takes time, but it doesn't include travel time. And everything that I have in this paint booth is set up and ready to go, and everything I have in this little hobby area is ready to go in this corner. And um, I'm blessed with a lot of room, so I could set up the Proxxon cutting table and start building terrain. Like it would literally take me 30 seconds to start going, and the 30 seconds involves me plugging it in and waiting for the wire to get hot enough to cut. You know, so and you know, I have craft paints ready to go, and my airbrush pump is hooked up to my airbrush, and it's plugged in, and it's right to my right hand side, so that's ready to go. I have all these old paintbrushes, new paintbrushes, and sapers and stuff like that. I have them on my desk, and behind me I have a plethora of paint. To the right I have a plethora of paint. And like, if you're going to model and get into this hobby, having everything accessible, so this way, you know, it doesn't take you long to get into the hobby, is essential, because then you're maximizing your time. So if I only have 1 hour a night, and that is amazing that I would have 1 hour a night, because I can get back down here and start right away into painting miniature. And when I do stuff at the local game shop, let's say I wanted to play almost a skirmish style Warhammer Hordes kind of game with a very, very small force, which is all I have really. And I would have to pack them up, and then I have to make sure that I have all the detail, like the dice with me, and I can have that packed, but I like displaying those miniatures. And I have a bag. You know, I do have a game bag ready to go, but then there's travel time, which takes me about half an hour to get to one store and 25 minutes to get to the other. So I mean, there's that. And in those 25 minutes, if I was just going to hobby, then I just take everything out and go, and it's half an hour of my 1 hour a night, right? It's already there. All right, next for some edge highlighting, I took ivory and then whites, and I take all my whites out, and I wanted to see which is best. And I stuck with just game white. And I'm doing highlights on a black gun, and you see how subtle that is. All right. I started with a duller white, and then I go into a bright white, and this way I can give it that depth, you know. I started with, I think it's dead white. No, I started with a ivory, and then I went to a dead white. So just give it that extra highlighting depth to it. Because I did realize that when I was doing non-metallic metal gold, that, you know, you have to painting those low lights and the highlights, and you go up to white, and, you know, it just looks better when the transition is smooth. And I like to have transitions in my edge highlighting as well. Again, giving that, I guess, realism or depth to something that just, that really has very little to it. I mean, it looks like a silhouette if it's painted black, and there's no real detail in there, because the details vanish when you paint something black, in my opinion, and you need to make them pop. So, you know, going from black to white, there's no bigger contrast than that. And I'm having this like a black metal kind of sheen, kind of glowing. And I didn't add any battle damage to it. I'm pretty much a clean painter. I don't know. I still am uncomfortable adding to what I feel like, you know, adding a lot of weathering, like doing some freehand and then covering it up with, you know, gook and stuff like that will add to the realism, but I just, it is a difficult step I need to get over, and I will one of these days. Today's not that day. Tomorrow doesn't look good either, but one day I will get over that hump and learn weathering. But for now, I like the way my miniatures come out, and I want to show off what I did, and I'll get into weathering. Speaking of weathering, and stuff of that ilk, I do want to say that I use a lot of different references when it comes to painting, and it's kind of important. Like I read like railroad miniature techniques and stuff like that, and I read Scale Auto magazine and Fine Scale Modeler, and I take ideas from that and I use it, for miniature painting as well. I try not to isolate myself by using just one medium. Of course, I use YouTube, and I check out things like Cujo painting, which, oh my gosh, and Vince Venturola. Obviously, I'm very, very active in watching his stuff and constantly promoting his stuff, because he is really a standard in which I need to lift myself up to, and and then push myself to. So once I get it to that level, he's got to improve, and then I have to get and chase the never-ending rabbit down the hole. And then there's other painters that are, oh my gosh, I look at Golden Demons and Crystal Brush award-winning stuff, and just like, it blows my mind, and getting to that level of painting, it takes a lot of practice and a lot of time and a lot of discovery, and that's why I don't mind taking my time with miniatures. I'm not painting for playing purposes. I've never played 40K. I never played Shadow War Armageddon. I never played. My gosh, the only thing I have played was Warma Hordes, and I have a 9-person force, and I don't use that. I usually just go for a 0-point game to. I think the most I've ever done in a full game was a 30-point game, and I lost track of the miniatures, honestly. Privateer Press, you guys are pretty cool, and you got a lot of cool stuff. I only have to say you need to work on that user friendliness when it comes to both the website and the learning curve it's pretty steep when it comes to that game, so it doesn't really lend itself onto like a newbie game to start out with. Or maybe it does for some people, but there is a lot of crunchiness, a lot of depth to the game, and this only works when this happens, and you could do this, but you can also have the option to do this. In fact, you could sacrifice yourself and do this move in order to get this ability later on, and it only works in this circumstance. I'm like, what? I guess that's just part of it. All right, Chestnut, Boss Chestnut, that's great. Oh, the base coat for that NMM Gold was Shrapnel Red, and as well as Arbuckles Brown, and I really like that warm gold color, and that's what I was going for. Again, contrast with the blue armor, I wanted some warm colors in there, so this way it'll make it pop. Time for some non-metallic metal gold, and I am not really having it on camera. I'll move it. I'll move it. I just wanted to show you the steps and progressions of it. And right now, just adding shadows. Let's see. And there it is. No, I'm going to get with it. There it is. Just adding some shadows in there. And I don't know. I think that was I went a little too aggressive with that little end, I think, now in retrospect. But, part of getting better painter is forgiving yourself too. Don't beat yourself up about something. Oh my gosh, I didn't do that shadow perfectly. Let me just take the green stuff. Let me take the simple green and strip the miniature and start over again. No, never do that, man. Unless it's catastrophic. But I always keep my miniatures that I painted there to remind me where I was. So this way, I'll be like, wow, I've improved. I've improved, honestly, when it comes to building these. You literally, I can see how the first one that I ever did, here's some ivory, the first one that I ever did, and up to this one, the miniature quality has gotten better. And the cool thing about that is, if you take one individual model up and pick it up, and analyze it with another one and look really closely, you can see it. But when you put them together in a force, you really can't notice. Like, it's tough. I'm going to do that later when I'm done with this. I'm going to put this with the regular force, and it just kind of blends in. It just does, you know. And that's pretty cool. But as a painter, I'm improving, and that's where it's all about. That's what it's all about. Couldn't resist. Could not resist. All right, so I'll get this straight. So now I'm going up from the shadows up to the highlight, and I'm going to highlight it with some white. I'm going to go all the way up to white. So I started with the deepest shadows. I added mid color there, and then I went straight to the highlight, and I'm going to try to tone it down to the brown and kind of like mix it in between. So I do both ends, shadow, then I do the ultra highlight, and then I mix in between. And that's how I do a non-metallic metal gold. And you can see it there. Just trying to, and it's all about subtleties. You want these transitions to be real subtle, and this is the part that takes like a long time. Well, then again, everything I paint, I mean, relative to other people, take a lot longer than some. And again, that's pretty cool. And I see I'm just like pushing the paint around, like literally just pushing it. You get over here. Know whenever you lift your brush, that's where the most paint is going to end up. So wherever you want the colors most reinforced, that's where you end your brush stroke. And keep that in mind when you're painting. Really, really valuable source. Something I learned the hard way, and by doing and making mistakes over and over again until I got it right. All right, time for some peanut butter. Don't eat this. I mean, some people do. And not as like a snack, but, you know, they have some on the end of their brush, and they use saliva to be able to, you know, erase things and, I don't know, get fine points to the tips of their brushes. And I'm guilty sometimes. I mean, these are non-toxic paints. But, yeah, there you go, some peanut butter. Don't eat it and get sick, please. Besides, they're very expensive, and I find that fantasy and game scale 75 paints are kind of hard to come by when it comes to the whole Amazon thing. Yeah, I try. Well, there you go with some peanut butter in the midtones right there. I do like that as a midtone. Yeah, there's a lot to it. A lot of people get intimidated with non-metallic metal gold because there's a lot to it, and there's a lot of subtlety to it, and there's practice. Now, see what I did there? I pushed the paint forward, and then I pulled it back. When you push the paint forward in up and down motion, push it towards the shadow, and then bring it back up again with the up and down motion. And what it does is it creates a gradient, and it's something I use sparingly because, you know, sometimes when you're pushing the brush like that, it might ruin the brush. So you can be careful with that. I mean, it depends how springy the brush is. And in other words, how quickly it goes back into place once you deform it. And again, just putting a really light coat onto it. And those transitions are pretty bad. Yep. And right now is I just took some paint and I try to blend it because some came on his shoe, but we're gonna add some wash there, so it's not really gonna matter. Yeah, it's a delicate process, and I do like the way that the Arbuckle's brown and that base coat kind of outlines the area. I think that's pretty cool. Gives it that 3D effect there with the shadows in the back. And it's all about subtlety. It's all getting about getting that gradient and thinning down your paint and just trying to work into areas and look at it and say, does that look shiny? And the thing, again, with the non-metallic metal gold, sometimes I'm looking at it and I'm like, this is atrocious. And then I look back and I look at it again and I look at it again. And it's like, no, I think I sold the idea. I go back and forth sometimes, you know. I'm pretty critical of my work, but I learn to be forgiving too. And know that it's a process. It's a process. But there it is. It is some non-metallic metal gold, and I will push paint. And if I was doing this for a show, I would push paint for hours on one piece, and hours, and for however long it takes for it to look great. You know. Now here's where I change it up from Vince's recipe. I'm going for some yellow ink, and very, very highly diluted, like superiorly highly diluted. And all it is just going to be a wash, and it's going to unify the colors, and it's going to brighten it up. That's what I'm going for here. So I put a ton of water in there. I put it on my wet palette, and then I dip the brush into the water, into the yellow, and then I put it back into the water, and that's how much paint I use. So it's just like a big blotch of water that I happen to whisper some ink into, and that's about it. And there you go. And I don't even know if you can notice the subtlety on camera, but it just brightens it up. It just puts a filter on it that makes it a little brighter. And I'm just taking care not to go over too much of the white right now, because I'm just going to go back with another ink, white ink, and do that so I can get the transition that I want. But part of the transition is unifying the colors, so this way there's no harsh lines. Alright, I use FW inks in different fashions. I've airbrushed it before, and I've used it as really light glazing. And I love it. I love FW inks. I was reluctant about pulling the trigger for a little bit, but you know, they're really cool. I really like them, and I'm still playing around with them, and I'm learning all about them. So I've had a lot of good effects to it. Here I am. Now that I have the yellow down, I want to reinforce the highlight whites, because I took some of the white away with the yellow and brightening that up. And I'm just giving it a little hint. Again, what I do is I take the ink and I dip the brush into the ink, just the tip of the brush, and then I dip the entire brush into water, and there you go. That's what I have, whatever's left on the brush. So there's no like ratio. And again, just pushing it and knowing where I lift off from the brush, knowing where it's ending, and reinforcing that with by lifting the brush and having it pull just ever so slightly. And there it is. Just a hint. Just a hint. And there's a transition right there. I like using those inks. Again, you push the paint around. You push the paint around until you're happy. You know. And if you go too far one way, you can go back with a neutral color, start again. Yep. Not too shabby. Now, there is just one piece, the front piece of it. And again, the thing with non-metallic metal gold, we spent a lot of time, well, not really for me, but you know, it's not just a once and done kind of thing. It's a going back and forth. It's a feeling thing. And you have to do it with all the metal, not just one piece. So I can imagine if you wanted to do the Stormcast Army in all non-metallic metal gold, I can imagine possibly just like, you know, my head exploding. I don't think I could do that. I probably could do that. I don't think I want to do that. I want to push my true metallic metals when it comes to those things, and learn how to do that effectively. So I have this to do in non-metallic metal gold, the band over here, the weapon over here, the top of the weapon right there, and here on the backside I have the Pauldrons for his life pack right there, and the actual cuff for the fur, and the actual gun. I want to make that non-metallic metal gold on both sides, and yeah. So I'm going to work on that, and I'll come back when it's done. And there you go. I added some things to it. Got some non-metallic metal gold on all those areas right there, using the exact same techniques. And with my Micron pen, I wrote in some Fenris letters into his chest caprice. And you can write anything you want. I think I wrote Fenris on another model right there. But there it is, all the metallic metal work. Gold into that, and you know, for some real experts out there, you're like, man, that's harsh, but I'll probably look back on it one day and say, wow, those were pretty terrible, but right now I'm happy with it. So you know, it's the most I've ever done. with non-metallic metal gold and pushing my limits. You can't get better at something you don't try, so, go for it and be happy with what you get. Time for some red. Again, I like using this carmine red and then some scarlet, which is more orangey, and then reinforce that with some inks rojo, and down I'll paint some up in the eyes area. So I've used Game Effects Dry Blood to go from like a crimson to a bright red. And this time I'm not doing that. This time I'm just using those three right there. And you could use a lot. And here are eyes. And for a lot of people, they tell me, dude, you spend so much time on eyes, building it up so slowly. My hand will start moving around and I'll botch things up. But look at the way I'm leaning the pill bottle onto the table. I'm locking my elbows in. I am holding the miniature with my left hand, and with my right hand I am leaning it on the pill bottle, reinforcing it with my pinky as a guide, so this way I can move the upper three fingers more like the two on top, and possibly the third finger there, just to get that control. And that's something I've been working on for a couple of years now, is brush control. And I still don't think I have it 100% there, but again, I will always work on that to get it right. So I could spend a lot of time just keep brushing it in the eyes. And one of the things that I do like doing in multiple passes is because I get the contours of whatever I'm painting, and I know the limits of it, and I start to understand the model at that deep level, like just one eyeball, and I will learn how much I should push the brush, where should I lift off to get to the edge, where should I start, and I really get a feel for it. Now notice I'm not using a double odd brush for the eyes. A lot of people like to use a little tiny brush, and the thing about little tiny brushes for me is that they dry quickly. There's not enough there in the belly of a brush to carry the paint. So by the time I do 1 to 2 passes, it's done. It's done. Then there's a danger of the paint actually coming down into the ferrule and you ruining the brush. So I have double odd brushes, which means 00 brushes. There are 000 brushes. There's I don't know how many zeros there are. But there's really, really fine brushes out there, almost to the point that it's like one hair. But honestly, I really can't see what you can paint with that effectively without dipping your brush 20 billion times into your palette. And even with this, this is a standard brush from Citadel, which I think it's a 1. And I've used bigger brushes than that to do fine work, because it really doesn't matter how big or long the brush is to the basic extent. Like I've seen people use 1s and 2s to be able to paint small things, and that is because what matters is the point that is actually touching the model. That's what matters the most. So if you have a really nice point to your brush, you can get fine detail work, because that's the area that's actually touching the miniature. Everything else is not touching the miniature. So, I wouldn't get like a canvas artist brush to be able to do it, but essentially you could. I don't think I've ever gone more than, when it comes to fine detail, ever gone more than a 2. But I used to paint with triple odd brushes to do the eyes, and thinking that was the easiest way. It is true that you don't really get, you have a little more control when it comes to like getting the edges of the eye and having a mistake. And if you're really, really scared of that, I recommend that you brace yourself like I've been doing, and using the hand and the other hand together, lock your elbows in, get into a comfortable chair. Some people actually lean back into their chair, so this way it's better for their back, and they have like armrest, They put it on the armrest. Well, they tuck their elbows in, and they have the miniature like on one hand, and then the other one, again, with the technique I'm showing you here, which is taking your miniature holder and using the other hand and putting one hand on top of the other to brace yourself. Because the more it's braced, the more control you have. Therefore, you can use a larger brush and not get it all over the place, because you have essentially locked down your body into a position where it's really hard for you to move around and it's really hard for you to make a mistake. So you can have really controlled brush strokes. And that part I've learned. And it took me years to do, but and I still haven't mastered it. It'll take me more years to keep getting, but I'm pretty comfortable with it now. And I'm comfortable with it because I've upgraded the brush, and there's more paint on the brush, and I can do that effectively. Now, what you want to do with painting the eyes, you want to go from a light, in this case red, to a darker red in the shadow, and you want the entrance and exit points for the lights. And then I put little white on the edges where I think the light is coming in, and then another dot towards the middle where I see the light is coming out. It almost looks like white eyes, but to get that jewel kind of effect to it, and I do like that. Alright, so now what I'm doing is some pin washing with more oil paint. Again, I'm risking everything I'm doing because I did not paint it gloss. I did not gloss coat it before I did this. And some people say, dude, you gotta ruin it. But some people weather their miniatures after they put in a lot of work onto it. And so hey, I'm taking this chance. You don't have to take this chance. You can be smart about this and not take this chance. I wasn't so smart about this, although it worked. So yeah, you know what? Result. There you go. Again, when doing oil washes, mineral spirits, and I think I used Onyx. I think that's the paint from Winsor & Newton, Series 1. There's a Series 2 as well. And I picked those up by going over to, it was AC Moore, and what I did was there was a teacher discount, and it doesn't matter if you buy it for the classroom or not. There's a teacher discount, and then there's a coupon online that you can always get stuff 55% off. And I got, like, every day I went in for a couple of weeks straight and got another tube of paint. And my wife and I went there after work, and God bless her for putting up with this. And I mean, I love her so much. I am so lucky. Yeah. So now I'm just taking this oil wash here, and I'm just like putting it different places. That headpiece on some of the miniatures of this Blood Claws, I actually painted that with a turquoise to have a glowing effect onto it. Not this one, but in other ones. And you'll see them in the pictures, and you're going to see different qualities of paint jobs in there if you look really, really closely. Well, yeah, look, this guy is starting to look pretty bad, but if I don't say so myself. Again, putting some reinforced shadows in there, and you got to clean some of that stuff up. But maybe I kind of want to leave it. I'm almost done. I love it. Oh man, I'm getting happy with this thing, and I'm liking the way it's coming out. Okay, so now we have to get some true metallic metal going on. Yes, I did that for the saw blade. And what I like to use is, here it is, get into frame, dude. All right, there it is. Metal color, and I love it. I do love it. I started off with some steel, and then I do some highlights with some chrome later. And Vince Venturella threw me onto that and put me onto that paint, and really the best metallic paint I've painted with. I've had some enamels that shine a bit better when I like do warp plane aircrafts, and yeah, those work really well. But when it comes to acrylic, hands down, this is the best metallic paint that you can get right now on the market. So I went whole hog, and I bought everything they made out of that, and I got it one Christmas, and and I just bought the line. I did because I'm going to use it, and I'm going to continuously use it. And the bottles are bigger than the regular squeezer bottle, so there's more paint to it. And it has like this surface. Here's chrome. It has a surface on the inside of the actual paint lid that underneath that has like a spout in the middle and like a drain, I guess, on the side. So this way it doesn't go all over the place. Sometimes I shake a miniature bottle up, and what's in there is like a cracked tip, and paint gets all over the inside. It's like so much wasted paint, and it's such a shame. And well, this time I don't have to worry about it. All right, just putting some damage there. Probably benefit from a wash later. I didn't go crazy with this. I don't know why. I could have. I can go back and do it, but I'm not gonna. I'm happy with the way it is. But next time I paint one of these guys, maybe I'll just weather it a little on the blade and use a lot more chipping. This is just some on the blade, but I could have done it more in a lot of different areas. Again, I made it really, really clean. All right. Time for some shoulder pauldrons. There's that dum-dum-dum. It makes me want to have burgers on one side, and then the yellow. And I did these in another video. I showed you how to do the shoulder pads and how to freehand that. This one, I took off its little corking base, and honestly, I don't even know why. I had no idea. I should have left it on, and at some point, I was like, I don't know. Maybe I was tired during this session. And yes, it takes me multiple sessions to do that. Again, I painted the shoulder pads separately because I have another video showing you how to paint the shoulder pads. And right now, I'm just painting the underside of it, right there. Again, just some ink and some flat yellow. And I don't do too crazy in that. Again, this miniature is not for competition, so when you paint the miniature for competition, you have to paint everything. Everything, even places you don't really see. You have to paint everything. And you have to paint everything to the same quality as you would if it was his face or anything like that. You don't skimp, and you really put your best foot forward when it comes to competition. But this is just something for my little cabinet. So if friends come over, I'm like, yeah, I paint some stuff. And be like, whoa, whatever. I'm like, yeah, no. I don't know. Thanks, I guess. I'll get better. But, yeah, no, the local people, local peeps, they seem to like it. So, and it's fun to see their faces light up sometimes when they see my work. I don't think I'm very good, but some people think I'm pretty okay. So that's pretty cool. I'll get there, and I'm enjoying myself. Now I went a little purple throughout here just to create that shadow. And I guess I could have... no, that's pretty decent. Creating the shadow, I'm trying to build it up. I'm trying to base coat it like I would the non-metallic metal. And I do non-metallic metal on the shoulder pads. I didn't... Since I showed non-metallic metal on the leg portion, I'm not going to go through and show a video of me doing the non-metallic metal on the shoulder pauldrons. I did it already, and I had to edit that stuff out because the video would have been way, way too long to do that as well. But just to show you that you need to base coat your shoulder pads, and doing it on this little, it's cork. There you go. I got it right now. So that's from a wine bottle. And I went to a restaurant, and every time I go to a restaurant, I'm like, do you have, cork? And yeah, I don't buy these things. You can buy them, but they get expensive. So, go to a local wine tasting event and just ask them, hey, do you have it? Some places might charge you. I've never been charged, especially if I'm in a restaurant that, it's a better tip for them. So it behooves them to make me happy. I hate to say it like that, but yeah, and I'm pretty generous when it comes to tipping. Those people work really hard, and why wouldn't I be? All right, time for a tooth, and I'm painting that the same way I did the bone. I go from darker to lighter as well. I use browns from the tip, and then I leave it white on the surface. And I sometimes on some of them I put the wash in, others not so much. I just put a glaze coat onto it and built it up. So yeah, man. So I take the caulk and I do is I hot glue it down to a little piece of cardboard. You could do chipboard or whatever you want to do it, and just makes it so much more stable. I even did that to my water container where I have a dropper in there too. And yeah, because I dropped that thing like, oh, man, I don't even remember how many times before I wised up and say, hey, maybe it should be on a base. Ta-da! Speaking of which, you can take your shades from Citadel. A lot of people have a problem dropping those, and I have too. And when I'm working with them, sometimes I just like take some poster putty and just like put a ring around it, and then just set it on a base, and I don't knock it over. It makes it really difficult to knock over. So that might help you too. All right, time to glue this sucker on. I don't know if it was advisable for me to put the glue on the actual shoulder or not, but I do that. And no, it's not painted all the way to non-metallic metal before I put it in there. And the reason why I did that is because I really want to know where the light is coming from, and I want to keep guessing every time I paint the non-metallic metal gold onto the shoulder pauldrons. And so yeah, just base coated, and then I just put it on there, and then I'll paint the non-metallic metal off screen. But yeah, no, I actually glue straight onto the miniature, and there was potential, again, for disaster in retrospect, that, maybe some spider web happens. Sometimes with the glue, you get a spider web, and if you lift off, that spider web goes on the miniature, and then you try to rub it off. Do not try to rub it off, because the second you try to rub it off, you can just rub on paint and all this other nastiness. So just be careful with that if you're going to glue onto the actual piece itself. The positive thing is that, you don't have to shift the shoulder pads too often, too many places. Now, I didn't put zip kicker on this because I didn't think I needed it. And there you go. Pauldrons on. I'm glad with the newer miniatures because the pauldrons are better sized. It doesn't look so much as a football player. These are oversized, in my opinion. But, hey, I even contemplated leaving them off at one point, but then the markings were on there, and it just, yeah, I went with it. I did make these a little taller, and by doing that is I put them onto a taller base. I used some caulking in that, and I'm going to have a basing tutorial how I made the bases for my for these Space Wolves. And for the little guys, which I call them, the little guys, you want to raise up the height so this way it can be about the same height as the Primaris Marines. So this way it unifies the force, so I can have a middle, so I can have not so much of an offset where you see these tall Primaris Marines and then the shorter ones. But these guys, about, when you look through the battlefield, will be about the same height. All right, time for some micro sole and micro set. I do like that, using those products when it comes to decals. I use it when I put on decals for my race cars, when I build a 124 scale model, and they're from Micro Industries. And I'm sorry, they're from Micro Scale Industries company. You can get that, and they sell a lot of different products with them. But Microset and Microsol, they are the standard. And what it does is it helps the decal set, and it helps it bend. Yeah, I put the setting solution there next, and you can I do dilute it just a little bit, and I've done it where I didn't dilute it, and I've done it where I diluted it. Now, if you have a bigger decal, what you want to do, especially if you want it to conform to an area, is you take your blow dryer. Be careful with that. Put it on the low setting and gently go over it, and you'll see it actually like sort of melt into place. So if you have like a lot of contours and you want to put a decal on there, you melt it into place. That's pretty. It's pretty cool to be able to do that. And sometimes when you have decals on top of, like, let's say a yellow decal on top of a red background, what you're going to want to do is you want to, make a mask of wherever you're putting that into, and cut it out with masking tape, put it into there, and spray over it. So this way the bottom part stays white, a neutral color, and then you can put the decal over it, and be able to do that. And in doing that, you'd have to print out, like, scan the actual decal, and then like cut it out, like get this scanned copy of it and cut it out to conform to the size, and then take that tape after you cut it out and put it onto the miniature and use that as a masking. So there's a multi-step process I think I will do on another video. All right, time for some dull coat right now. And I think I just jumped the gun with this a little bit because I didn't do the non-metallic metal gold. No, I didn't do the non-metallic metal gold, and I put the dull coat on it already. Yeah, that's all right. It's fine. Yep, make it happen. There it is. Again, non-metallic metal gold. I did it off screen, but there you have it there. And what I'm going to do now is I'm adding weathering. Now this is pastel that I grounded down. I think I paid $4, $5 for an entire set of pastels, and I took a mortal pastel and I crushed it down and I put it in these little containers, and it's a weathering pigment. And so I use a very, very soft brush. These are sable brushes, and they don't really have a point. So I mean, there's a point for it being there. It's just it doesn't come to a very fine point. So I use it for precisely this reason, because it's soft and it doesn't like rip off any of the pre-existing layers. One note on the microset microsol: don't be too aggressive with it. It will peel up your paint. You may want to put a gloss coat over it before you put on a decal, because the gloss coat actually helps it adhere to the model a little better. But again, I'm throwing caution to the wind. But yep, these are a real easy method to put on some grime onto it, and I'm literally pennies on the dollar for what I paid for it, and I've been using it for 3 years now, and look at that, it just looks dusty. It does. You can seal that in with dull coat, or you can just leave it like that and add more whenever you need to. It'll always look different. I should think it looks better before I, put a dull coat and to seal it up. But if you're going to be gaming with it constantly, then yeah, I would recommend you dull coat it. But yep, now time to take this sucker off. There's poster tack, by the way. I put poster tack on the bottom just to hold it into place, and it's something I do with all my miniatures. And then you may want to take, you may want to use the actual, this is a pinning tool, I guess. It's a scraper from Dentist Tool. I love using Dentist Tool. They're so precise. And you take some of that off right there, a little bit right there too. Be careful. See, I'm using my other finger as a guide, as a stopper. There you go. And there it is. How you doing? You're doing pretty good. I like the way it came out. It's all right. I'm happy with it. I'll call it just about done if I ever do those. And this is what I was talking about, elevating. And I'm going to do a tutorial on these bases, and that's coming up in a future video. And I'm raising and elevating the height of the miniature by putting them on this and making them more 3D. And then I put snow on it because, Fenris is a snow-covered death planet, or death world, it's called. And I wanted to recreate that. And I have a gaming mat that's pretty, Arctic tundra or snowy tundra or something like that. So it would definitely work. And some of these bases I actually put water on, and I'll do a tutorial on that as well. But again, I drill the holes. I use these screws and they're nails, and I chop them down and with a Dremel, and I cut them and I drop them down, and there you go. It has a point to it, and I really like that because it's a cork base, and it penetrates through. And what I do is, without any glue, gently putting it down and marking the area where it's supposed to be and lifting it up, and then I have an indentation right there. And what I do is I take one of these nails. You can get any size that's more convenient for you. I think it's just regular nails. And I think I spent 25 cents on that whole box, and that'll last me. And then I push it down with an object. I'm using a pill bottle here. You can use anything really. Just pushing it down so it hits the base, the plastic part. Then lifting up, and you have a nice little hole as a guideline to where your miniature is going to stand. Then it's time for some Gorilla Glue. This is not the clear glue. Um, I have to work with that some more and see where I can get with that Gorilla Glue clear. But this is super glue and one of choice. I like this one and I like Loctite as well. But I've been sticking with the Gorilla Glue and it's been working very well for me. I do not like crazy glue. I worked with it. It just seems runny for me. And capping it is a nightmare. Recapping crazy glue is a nightmare to me. I'm sure there's methods, and if you like it, that's cool. But it's not my choice. Now, here's the hard part. Me and my clumsy self getting this little thing in there. The little piece of nail into the hole that I drilled out with the Dremel tool. And getting it in there. Yeah, got it in there. Now, that's wet glue there, so gonna have to kind of set that. And I'll put some glue on the other foot just to make it secure. Or do I? Do I do it? No, I don't even put glue on the other foot for this one. Usually it's both there. So, too late now. I'm committed. There you go. Yep. Came out pretty well in my opinion. Yep, not too bad. It's not floating. It's not floating. Like I've had miniatures that were floating. I'm like, no. No. It's so sad. You know, but some if you cut it the wrong way, it'll do that. But this is it's pinned in with a nail and not even anything else, and it has that point again. You can use a lot of things for that, but for pinning, one being a paper clip. All right, so there you have it, and it is done. And this is what I mean by putting them into an army and watch them blend in. Let's take it away from the desk here. Oh yeah. There's my basement, and I'm going to put it with you. Yep, you're just one of the guys. Yeah. Yep, totally blended in. There you go. And I think that pretty much does it for this one. Alrighty, well, thank you for joining me on this adventure of the Blood Claws. There's more to come. I have long fangs and a whole bunch of other stuff. Well, there you have it. I've been working 4 months on this project, and I've learned so much throughout the process. I'm a slow painter and a painter before a player, so I hope you like this video, and if you like this video, like, share, and subscribe, and I'll catch you next time on the Miniatures Paintbrush.